All right, everybody. Thank you for joining this week's webinar series of LeadsCouncil's Leadership. I'm really excited about this. I'm Rob Seaver. I'm Executive Director of LeadsCouncil. And once again, I'm going to say this is my most exciting part of the week because I get to talk to everybody. I'm going to jump real quickly because we've got a packed schedule right now. I promised myself I wouldn't read off of things, but I have to because I'm going to introduce some of our panelists today. And we're going to kick it off with Natalie, David. And one of the things that I want to say about Natalie is that please give her all the love. This is something that we were sitting back and enjoying ourselves before this, and I want to make sure that you appreciate what she's done to bring this to you. And Natalie she leads all brand-focused business efforts and sales operations for PX, transforming the way marketers acquire customers and assert control over their partnership and results. Natalie, what's your title, by the way?
I'm a VP Sales.
VP of Sales. I should have had that up there. But, you know, Natalie, your first effort here is going to be leading us through a few slides to help us understand what agility and uncertain times are. And I'm really excited to see what you have to share. After Natalie's done, we're going to quickly introduce the rest of the panelists and get going. I would say that I want to do a couple of housekeeping things real quickly. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a Q&A box. At any time during this webinar, if you'll just click on that and ask the question in that, the panelists are watching. They're going to try to get to as many questions that they can. And if we don't get them answered, we'll do what we can after it to make sure that they get answered. And so, Natalie, it's your show. Let's go ahead and do this.
Great. Thanks so much, Rob. And I'm excited to be here today with all of you. What we hope to do is basically just provide some useful ways of approaching this new reality that we're all facing and highlight some of the best ways that we've seen marketers today act with agility during these uncertain times. So without further ado, let's kick it off. So we're here to talk about agility, which always kind of brings up thoughts of quickness, dexterity, being clever. But we also like to think of agility in terms of keeping your balance and keeping control. And that's not an easy feat to do even in normal times, but it can really be critical to success. And I think that's true now more than ever. So what does agility mean in a business context? Well, it means doing more with less. So thinking about how do you maximize efficiency? How do you shift your resources, grow impact, and do it all much more seamlessly? You're thinking about, two, how quickly can I act? Save time doing the things that you already do, streamline things, increase your bandwidth and overall capacity to be ready to face whatever the day holds. And three, pivot. So how do you course correct quickly? How do you become proactive versus reactive? How do you stay one step ahead versus putting out fires? And these are things that everyone's probably thinking about. So where do we start? Let's start with the IAB, which gives us a broader view of the internet advertising ecosystem overall, beyond just our lead gen segment. We were struck by a report that the IAB just published recently, and they noted, perhaps unsurprisingly, 3 out of 4 people think that this is a huge deal and that coronavirus will have a greater impact than even the financial crisis of '08. What's interesting to see is that 7 out of 10 marketers have already acted on that in some meaningful way. They've paused, they've cut their budgets, they've shifted, they've clearly recognized the challenge ahead and they've begun to adapt. This is agility basically playing out right before our eyes. The second piece of research that we looked at surveys the marketplace to find out what are brands and major advertisers doing. And in all of this uncertainty, marketers are gravitating towards performance marketing. They're shifting budgets to where they can produce measurable results and drive direct sales outcomes. So the research here indicates there'll be a lot of opportunities in performance marketing, and hopefully that means good news for many of us in the industry, and I really hope it does. We recently sent out a survey along with LeadsCouncil to get a snapshot of what you're all experiencing, and the results were in line with what we've also been hearing from clients and partners across the industry as well. There's a mixed bag. This is impacting companies in different ways, where some are seeing their businesses up by over 30% and others dropping by as much as 80%. And so there's really different impact that we're seeing across the industry. We can probably all agree that even in performance marketing, things already look very different than they did just 3 or 4 weeks ago. Consumer behaviors changed, priorities have changed, sales processes and performance levels have changed, and essentially marketers are having to reevaluate every part of their funnel to see how they can make it work given a new normal. The old rules don't apply, and that's exactly where agility has to kick in. So what does agility actually look like? Well, for starters, it's pretty amazing to see. Look at all of us. Our entire industry has moved to working remotely and shifted to virtual and phone sales in a very short amount of time. Kudos. But beyond that, we wanted to share 9 other ways that we're seeing agility in action. And we hope to offer you all some useful ideas to support your business continuity. So, for starters, the first best practice in agility that we're seeing is turning the outside inside. Social distancing has become the norm. So how do sales teams sell? For many, that's been a huge challenge. How do you operate a business that sells direct to consumer in these times? One company actually took their entire field sales team of door knockers and brought them inside. They converted them into an inside sales force. Later during the panel discussion, we'll have Mark Stokes talk about how Alder actually made that radical shift and how they were a step ahead of the industry in doing so. That's a dramatic shift, certainly very agile and very proactive. Another home services company we've seen, rather than taking their team inside, they stayed outside. So in solar and roofing, for example, pardon me, in solar and roofing, for example, we've seen companies get super creative deploying drones to aid in external roofing measurements in order to offer their consumers a quote. That's incredible. And if you actually do a Google search for, drone roofing measurements, you'll find tens of these companies offering that service. And one more point in home services, look at what we're all doing here. We're on Zoom. We've seen clients actually use tools like Zoom and Skype and others similar to walk potential customers through what normally happens in an on-site in-home visit. So they're hand-holding their buyers remotely to do things like take in-home measurements or figure out security camera coverage, just really clever ways to think about continuity of selling, even when you can't get inside the home. In thinking about how to maintain a steady flow of sales, the fourth best practice we wanted to share is that we've seen some companies adjust their product pricing to consumers. How do they make it more attractive for consumers to purchase today? And in line with price-based incentives, we're also seeing time-based incentives. So seeing companies actually sell into further future dates in anticipation of when this all hopefully blows over. So these companies are offering customers the opportunity to lock in a price now, as long as the deal is executed within a specific time frame in the future, either 60 or 90 days out. So far, if we were to just take a pause here, that's 5 different ways that companies have figured out how to maintain their sales operations. And we want to just give a shout out to anybody that's already adapted these approaches and hopefully offer some ideas to anybody that's thinking about how they can do so. So for these companies that have figured out how to maintain sales operations, let's talk about how they're marketing. We know not every sale is created equal. And so the next point that we wanted to highlight is we're seeing some advertisers in the industry entirely adjust their qualification criteria. They're either tightening or loosening the criteria or certain threshold requirements that they have to allow for more or fewer customers in the funnel. And I think this is key. When every dollar counts and sales are the lifeblood of the company, we're seeing marketers basically figure out who do they want to talk to, and that might look different from what it looked like even as recently as a month ago. For this next one, this is very much in line with what we showed, with the research that we showed earlier in terms of shifting to performance marketing. We're seeing marketers try and move further down the funnel. So moving from buying leads to now buying calls to buying appointments as well, thinking about how they can drive their marketing budgets directly into the bottom line. So we've talked a lot about advertisers, about buyers. Let's talk about publishers. Well, the old adage is don't put all your eggs in one basket, but it's not that easy to diversify. At a time like this, what we can see is that the more diversified businesses are managing to weather the storm a bit more easily. And we're seeing publishers make some really agile shifts from certain verticals to others. Often they're going in favor of verticals that appear to be more essential at this time or more relevant to the tone of the day. So consumer cost savings becomes really important, essential home services, and generally insurance products is something that consumers are very aware of at the moment. One of our publishers actually showed us an entire framework that they had created and built for how they were going to scenario plan and determine how they go into new verticals. And so when they needed to pull the trigger, they were able to do so very quickly. Later on in our panel, we're going to discuss a little bit more about scenario planning and how to think about that if you haven't already. Second to last, we're almost done. The 8th best practice we wanted to highlight is around pricing. So you may remember, we've shown this slide a few times before. This is really a best practice of right pricing. So total agility in pricing means don't overpay, don't underpay, be precise and be flexible in pricing to performance. This is true for both advertisers and for publishers, where we ultimately see greater sustainability and efficiency in dynamic pricing models, or what we call DCPL. The last tactic that I wanted to talk about, there are times when it doesn't make sense to buy and sell leads at all. In mortgage, as many of you experienced, things changed so quickly, almost overnight. Lenders found themselves inundated with organic inquiries, and they had to shut down many of their paid marketing channels. It became almost impossible for lenders to manage that. The best practice here is when the leads aren't flowing, communication definitely should. This is a time for understanding, so keeping the lines of communication open is really key. So that's 9 agile approaches. These are 9 examples of what we're seeing in the market through our lens at PX. What are buyers doing? What are sellers doing? And how are they adapting to the new reality? We hope that you can act on some of these or use them for inspiration in how you apply them to your business. One pro tip that we did want to call out is that agility, it's not a one-shot deal. So making any one of these agile moves often requires the need for several others. Success ultimately means being able to continue to proactively adapt. That's our take on agility, and we hope you found it helpful. At this point, I want to turn it back over to Rob, who can introduce the panel, and hope it's a valuable one. Thank you so much.
Well, Natalie, I really appreciate it. I found all of that interesting and really syncs up with the conversations I've been having with a lot of our board members and other member companies. I see pockets of this, so I think this is timely and very exciting that we're pushing this out today. Now I'm going to go back to my most unpopular part of doing this job and reading again from a script as I introduce the people who have volunteered their time to come and share the things that they're doing in their company. I'm really excited about these people. This is a good powerhouse lineup, and I think you're going to be super excited and learn tons about what they're doing in their companies to shift and be agile in these uncertain times. I'm going to start off with today's moderator, who's going to take over the duties from me just in a second. That's Boss Offers. He's the co-founder and COO of PX, which is the leading marketing technology platform for customer acquisition. It's a comprehensive platform to automate leads and call campaigns. Boss is also, and this is what I added, soon to be voted on our board. I hope that happens real soon. And Boss, thank you for spending the time and taking over the duties for me today as moderator.
Thank you, Rob.
I'm going to move on to somebody that I've known for a while, as long as I've had this job, and he's a founder member on the board. He's somebody that I call on often to ask his opinion. And then when he sends me little notes every once in a while and thanks me for something, he doesn't understand how much that actually means to me when I get something. And that's Ross Shankin, who is the CEO and founder of Jornaya. A lot of you use that platform and his technology. And Ross, thank you very much for joining and helping us out with today's duties as a panelist.
Thank you for the kind and flattering words. They will take you far. So appreciate it.
I'm hoping, membership's due in January. Anyway, Mark Stokes is somebody that I've just recently met. He's the EVP and General Manager and Inside Sales at Alder Home Security. We heard a little bit about his company with Natalie earlier, and I think we're going to hear a little bit more about what they're doing. They're the fastest growing national DIY home security company, and they've got a great story, which I think you're going to hear a little bit more of on today's panel. And then I'm going to round it out with Jose Vargas, who is, if you're seeing him, I'm not sure how they're displayed on the screen, but he's also growing his COVID beard for us all. And he's the co-founder and president of healthcare.com. He's been a successful technology entrepreneur for 20 years, founding companies including mailcreations.com, Brokers Web, and AutoWeb. And Jose, thank you very much for joining as well. Did I mess up something here?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Did I jump? Okay, all right. Anyway, I hate reading this stuff. I will tell you that that is the worst part of this presentation, and I can't wait to get Boss back into the driver's seat. And let's get this thing kicked off. As moderator, before I start, please, if you have questions, go to your Q&A box and answer or ask those questions, and we're going to get them answered.
Thank you, Rob. So I'm not going to read out anything anymore from a piece of paper. At least I'm going to try after that, Rob. So thank you, everyone, in terms of the participants and also the panel members for joining today. We have a unique group of people with a lot of experience, and I'm really, really excited to hear some of these experience shares throughout this session. So I know it's a tough time for a lot of us today, and I think what's really important is that we actually bundle our thoughts together and that we share as many experiences towards our peers today. And outside of today, obviously, in the next couple of weeks, because sharing, I think, will get us through this. So let me jump in right away. And Jose, I'm going to actually start with you because for a lot of us, working from home is a totally new situation. I think your company has a little bit more experience about that. Maybe you can share some thoughts on what to do and what not to do working from home today.
Yeah, well, stay away from the kids. I've got 3 of them, and I don't know what's more dangerous, COVID or having the kids at home. But yeah, I mean, I've been in technology for the last 20 years. You know, been through a lot of ups and downs and a lot of black swan type of situations. You know, the dot-com bubble burst, and then 9/11, and obviously 08, 09. So, you know, but we're technology first type of, you know, company. You know, we work remote. We work, we have a, you know, my door is getting knocked right now. We have always work with, you know, remote teams. And, you know, it's been a lot of work and a lot of getting used to working in different offices and you know, different countries for that matter. But you know, it's for situations like today, it's very positive because you have a team already that's used to working remote, that knows how to use tools like Zoom and calls and you know, tracking tools and ticket tools. So you know, I think that you know, from the very beginning, you know, we used to work very remote, and you know, the company even before COVID, you know, we again multiple offices, people working virtually, and you know, it gets you basically used to having a cadence of calls and reports and things like that. So it's kind of like a muscle that you have to build working remote.
Awesome, thanks. One golden tip that you have, I think you shared, over communication is key today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, having a you know, we used to have a you know, always a schedule of cadence. You know, communication is something that you could do better, but you know, we've decided to invest even more because you know, you have more people working remotely. You want to make sure that everybody's motivated. You know, our HR department started what they call the virtual happy hours, you know, and you know, they set it up in a way that everybody participates and shares their personal issues as well as business issues. But I mean, communication is a key. You know, make sure, you know, we make sure that we have calls scheduled every day, that we have we still do our monthly parking lot calls. Now we're doing this virtual happy hours, but you know, people need to hear, I think it's a time to be even more open and transparent about the company as a whole and how we're executing as a team and how the company is doing financially with their clients, and be able to share that, because sometimes you have to share not so good news or bad news, but sometimes you share some very good news and wins and things that have been executed very well by the team, that you get very positive feedback by sharing that to the team and getting everybody motivated in these special times. Not everything is bad news, and people are still working, and some of us really appreciate the jobs that we have as we see the news, and I think some people are actually even working harder, but us as management have to do a lot more work in communicating and being more transparent as to the situation of the company, and being on top of basically the team, and sharing more reporting and things like that.
Thanks, Jose. Let me switch to Ross. Ross, can you share a little bit what you guys have done at Jornaya to stay agile and try to be as proactive as you can today? You're muted, Russ.
A rookie mistake. I didn't unmute. Thanks for that. But what I was saying is really a lot of it is, for starters, building on what Jose said. The first week or two that this became clear that it was a pandemic and we were all going to be home for some time, and we weren't sure how long. The first things first were in a situation where they were physically healthy, their families were healthy, mentally healthy. I think the first few days was kind of exciting, and everybody felt like they could maybe work a little more effectively remotely in some cases. Others, have a harder time with multiple kids, like me and Jose, and some of them have young kids and both working spouses. They might not have the perfect work from home setup. So kind of getting all that sorted out first was key, because created a strong additional trust of everybody working together. On top of that, once we kind of felt secure there, one of the things that I really learned for the first time was what's called scenario planning. So several board members and key colleagues and people I network with, none of us, we're all sort of facing uncertain times. Some of us are facing challenging times right away, but certainly we're all going to be impacted as a business in one way, shape, or form, if not more. And so without knowing exactly how you're going to be in the last couple of weeks is really laying out kind of what are all the different things that might impact our customers and that might impact, therefore, us. And how can we help, A, mitigate some of those things, but B, kind of be ready to react and respond as we see trends unfolding. Because nobody knows how long this is going to last. Nobody knows all the impacts, how deep the impacts are going to be. So I would strongly say it can be hard to look at like worst case scenarios, but would encourage everybody to look at those, because that's what we did. And once you do that, you kind of stare the scary stuff in the face, and you start to figure out, okay, well, what are we going to do about this? How can we help our customers maybe a little differently than we would normally have done 60 days ago, 30 days ago even. And we're all kind of rallying energy about how we can go about our business. So that was really critical. And now we're kind of, we have that foundation built in, and we're working towards putting those things into action. Additional hyper communication with customers, with colleagues, having value-based conversations, helping with new challenges that are coming up all the time. So that's kind of the path we followed, and it's at least kind of.
You dropped for the last 10 seconds, Russ, but let me actually have a quick follow-up question for you. So in terms of the scenario planning, how do you actually ensure that you guys are following and also updating those scenarios? Is there a weekly meeting on that? Is that something that you're actually eyeing on a daily basis? How do you guys make sure you can make quick actions if needed?
Yeah, there's a small group of us that we've chosen to work on that particular part of the business. And so, but we share that information. So we have some dashboards set up, and, dashboard sounds really fancy. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're just, Google Sheets that multiple times a day as information is coming in. So we've found different ways to communicate across our business, and we're probably accelerating some of those and doing even more of that at a more frequent pace than we normally would during these times.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Mark, let me switch to you. I think one of the more radical shifts that we've seen pretty early on that Alder took, which is a nice experience share, I think, for the people that are participating today. Can you share a little bit what you guys have done pretty early on and why you guys chose to actually do that so quickly as well?
Yeah. So, I think we saw kind of how this was playing out, and made the decision to pause our door-to-door program. And at the time when we announced that, it wasn't a popular decision amongst the industry. I think we caught some flack for doing that. But now I think every major company has announced that they've paused door-to-door business. We're sensitive to the perception of door-to-door sales. We want that to be a respected industry, a respected and viable channel, and we want it to be something that we can control. And so we saw this escalating and thought, if we don't move, if we don't get guys off the doors, then regulators will step in and kind of make those decisions for us. And so, we were glad to see the other companies announce similar measures, and what everyone's kind of doing now. You mentioned the opportunity for performance marketing. I mean, these door-to-door agents are being pushed inside. And so you have companies now scrambling to stand up, these inside sales teams with these former door-to-door sales pros. And so, we had an inside sales business. And so for us, we were able to move quickly there. And so that was part of the reason why we announced when we did. We had lead growth, we had partnership growth, and so we had work for these door-to-door guys to do. And so, some of these companies that didn't have door-to-door, that didn't have inside sales, it's probably very difficult decision for them to make. They didn't have the experience or the Rolodex of who sells leads and how that business works. And so for them to pull guys off the doors, pull salespeople off the doors, was a challenging decision. What we've learned, we've got a few weeks now of teaching these guys and these sales pros how to do this. One, we've had to manage the expectation. This is a different job than what they're used to. They sit in front of a computer now and wait for a beep in their ear. And for a lot of these people, they like the sun on their face. They like to get out and interact face to face with people. And so we've had to manage expectations. We've had to obviously train them to this new process. And a big part of that is compliance training. There's active litigation in our industry. And so for any company that's moving people from the doors to the phones, make sure you don't forget about the laws surrounding TCPA and CCPA. It sounds like next week there will be more discussion on that on the Leads Council call. So I definitely recommend people tune in, educate themselves on those issues, because those can be very costly mistakes. But then also the technology, the dialer, the software that you're leveraging to contact these leads. Some companies might not have a lot of experience with that. And so if you're jumping into this without that experience, there could be some costly lessons. But we've been fortunate to have kind of a foundation built there, and so for us it was an easier decision to make.
What was one of the biggest challenges that you faced with turning the door knockers into inside sales, and how did you guys address that? Did you have to make super quick changes throughout the process? Obviously, people wanted to be outside, so waiting behind the computer seems to be a big change. But what can you share on that side?
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest challenges, this is a dramatic change for a business to go through, and with little preparation, with little advanced planning. And so one of the challenges has been trying to do this remotely. And so we're doing all this through Zoom calls. development team is working remotely. Our sales training is remotely. The door-to-door agents are remote, and so we're having to develop technology, develop these campaigns, the reporting tools, the sales training, the software training. We're doing all of this in a remote setting, and so I feel like I never get out from behind my laptop from sun up to sundown. I'm on some type of call or training, and so I think that's been the biggest challenge. Is we're trying to be very careful to avoid bringing groups together right now. We're not having agents travel. We're not bringing them into the office for this training, and so we're taking large groups of people and quickly pivoting them to this new process in a virtual world.
Thank you all three for sharing your thoughts on your business, how you've been dealing with this. Let me switch it up a little bit and Ross, ask you about what Jornaya has seen on the consumer side. Obviously, Jornaya has a unique objective overview on how consumers are behaving online. Very curious what you've seen in regards to, is there a change on the consumer side, and where have you seen that biggest change today? You're muted again, by the way, Ross. Still muted. Bottom left button.
Okay.
I think you can. Yeah, there you go. Muted again.
Yeah, it looks like he's got some audio troubles there.
You can't hear me at
Yeah,
all?
there we go. We can hear you now.
Okay. I'm in by phone also because apparently I'm having some internet issues, so I'll just try to make that work. But but I heard your question, so happy to respond. Yeah, we're not seeing, so what we see is online consumer behaviors, especially for major life purchases. The biggest ones are mortgages and other lending products, as well as insurances, including auto, home, life, health. We also have a presence in the education space and somewhat in automotive. But starting with just the big ones, so from a shopping perspective, consumers are shopping the same or more, if anything. In the world of mortgage, they're shopping, an incredibly increased amount than they were 30 and 60 days ago. And I think shopping activity was pretty high even back then, because rates have continually dropped and fluctuated. But with the recent events and with the CARES Act and the interest rates going down, mortgage shopping has been extremely high. As Natalie mentioned earlier, the demand is so high that it's actually overwhelming banks and non-bank mortgage companies. So that can impact on the downside their outbound marketing efforts during some of these times, because they kind of have more demand than they know what to do with, although it doesn't eliminate it completely. In the insurance space, I would say slight increases. So people have more time, I suppose, and they're thinking more about cutting costs and ways that they can do that in their own house for things like auto insurance. It seems as if they are thinking more about life insurance. They're shopping more actively in health insurance and want to make sure that all of those things are buttoned down as we think about our own futures as consumers. And so the shopping activity really is not slowing down. Education is pretty steady, and the long-term prognosis there is pretty positive, I guess medium-term and long-term, with companies experiencing normal operations and continuing to try to grow. So that's on the consumer side, and I might pause there because I'm not sure if you're asking about sort of how these brands are thinking about their worlds, and maybe that's a separate question.
Let me actually get back to that in a second, Ross. You mentioned health and life insurance. Kobe just asked a question. Let me ask that question to Jose. Kobe asked, we've had a lot of buyers ask us to set up temporary ad campaigns with COVID language included, particularly within the life and solar verticals. We've refrained from doing so this far. I'm wondering if anyone has done this in a way that does not inflict fear in the consumer, and if they're seeing success in terms of acquisition rate and cost. And obviously with healthcare.com, if you go to healthcare.com today, I don't think there is a message addressing COVID. I'm curious about your thoughts on this particular.
Yeah, so, we're in health insurance and Medicare, so we're more regulated in the sense of what type of messaging we can have, because, on our lead side, a lot of our buyers are carriers and, and regulated call centers that sell Medicare Advantage, a product that's, very heavily regulated. And then on our coverage business, Pivot Health, we sell our own direct-to-consumer short-term health insurance policies, and that's also regulated. So I don't think we've changed our messaging to drive more specific COVID messaging or language in our landing pages or campaigns per se, but we've actually seen a huge spike in keywords. So for example, Cobra, or alternative to Cobra health insurance, or health insurance overall, those the volumes of people looking for health insurance keywords and Cobra alternative related keywords have really spiked, because obviously you see 3 million people out of a job, 6 million people last week out of a job. And if they are going to start shopping around for alternatives, some will stay with their Cobra, some are looking for either an ACA plan or other alternative like ours. And we've definitely seen a spike, maybe over 45% above our target. That doesn't mean that we're really bullish, and we're still very we view this as still for us necessary to have a conservative view about what's happening. But in our past experience, 08 and 09, we kind of saw the same thing. At that time, I was running a company called Brokers Web. We're again, doing lead gen for health insurance and Medicare. And we saw a huge spike right after Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, because you had a lot of people losing their jobs. They were looking for Cobra alternatives. But, and again, insurance is counter-cyclical that way. In this case, I think that we have two drivers of demand. One is, again, people losing their jobs looking for alternatives. But then you also have uninsured people that are kind of thinking like, oh, wow, this could be pretty bad. Let me now run and see what can I get that gets me and my family covered, if in case they didn't have insurance or they were underinsured. So we're looking at a spike in demand, but that doesn't mean that we're changing the way we're running our business. We're actually looking at a more conservative approach and being more, finding ways to be more conservative, but definitely not changes in languages or offers or because, we're again regulated, we got to comply. And, but we're definitely see a spike in keywords that their volumes were not as big as before.
Do you see other companies doing this, competitors that are actually, in your eyes, crossing the line?
I don't think so. I think that, we have a small industry, and, I wouldn't call competitors, but we are co-competitors. We've been in this business for over a decade. I think at the end of the day, everybody ends up working with each other. The people that survive are people are doing the right things. And I think that's across the board in every other industries. I'm sure there's probably those scammers that are probably wanting to take advantage and things like that. I haven't seen it in health insurance, and hope that I don't see it. But I really haven't seen anybody like really wanting to take advantage of this. It's very fluid. It's and it's definitely happened really fast. And I'm sure there's people not doing it right, but we're staying with the way we do business and complying to regulations.
How do you see that, Mark, in terms of like the keywords for your business offering protection, especially protection around the home of the consumer today? Is it something that you're changing your messaging within your campaign strategies today, your branding? Is there anything that you're doing to also be very aware of it?
Yes. Yeah. To directly answer the question, Facebook and Google are just, two of the platforms that are restricting that type of language in ad campaigns. And so, I would avoid that. I would avoid directly calling out COVID if you're interested in a marketing campaign, both for the fear of, the concern of having kind of fear-based marketing, but also just your ads likely to get blocked in some of the, larger campaigns. We sell residential DIY security, and so we see an advantage in that we're selling and fulfilling without ever having a face-to-face interaction with the consumer. And so our messaging, stay home, stay safe, see outside while staying inside. We're trying to indirectly call out maybe or address some of the concerns that consumers have right now in terms of, self-quarantine and social distancing. And so, we have some indirect messaging regarding our product, the DIY installation, and some of our product solutions that address some of those concerns consumers might have right now.
Thank you. Going back on the campaign strategies, or actually sticking with that topic, Ross, you mentioned something first about the consumer side of the business, that you guys see how the consumer is behaving. I'm curious what you see how brands are behaving and what you can see on that side today. Muted.
I got a double unmute.
Yeah.
Are we good? Okay. Thanks for the question. So we're seeing sort of distinct stratified types of behaviors depending on the vertical. So in insurance, and it's especially in P&C insurance, auto and home, there are very well capitalized companies, and those insurances are a necessity. So they will be impacted potentially by bills having to be delayed in payment and things like that. But they're very well capitalized, and generally they're thinking aggressively and thinking offensively. How do we continue to grow our businesses during this time, grow our market share? They have the capital to do it, and they sell a necessity. Life insurance, we have seen that uptick that I talked about. However, there's this notion of there's inbound demand increase, which means that changes kind of how some of these companies are thinking about outbound and thinking about spending money on performance marketing and advertising, because they have more demand coming in the door, and they're kind of dealing with that, and they want to shift some resources there. So for example, like in life insurance, we're seeing that they can't close as many deals because they have to go to the home to do it. So similar to Mark's company, you have to actually send a person out to do the physical, but they're doing all the work to line people up and get them ready to be closed at a future date. And they're also kind of pausing more in the ways of direct mail and things like that, again, because there's more inbound demand. The world of mortgage is similar, but to a much greater degree. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of consumers are spending a lot of time now calling different companies or becoming leads or wanting to talk about refinancing mortgages or refinancing other credit and debt. And it's actually overwhelming the resources that the companies have to supply to them. So a lot of companies are shifting their resources around, they're shifting their spend around to focus more on this inbound demand for the time being. Everybody we talk to sort of says, that's not going to last forever. And some of the longer term thinking companies that we work with are saying we still want to use this time to really get good at some of these outbound things. So we're still putting some cycles into that, but primarily they've been kind of shocked into an overwhelming amount of demand, which is a good thing in some ways, but also has some negative impacts for folks who are focused on outbound marketing assistance and help in that area. So those are the two big verticals that we play mostly in. And I think all of these trends and everybody we talk to, the customers themselves, they recognize what's going on. They recognize that this is a limited period of time. Nobody knows exactly how long. But even if COVID continues longer than we expect, there's only so much refinancing demand that will come on the inbound side, and it will start to dissipate at some point. And so nobody's sort of delusional thinking that this is a new normal. This is actually just a shock to the system, and we got to kind of work our way through it. And then things will start to spike up in terms of outbound strategies again in mortgage. Education is kind of slow and steady. I'd say, the volatility of education was mostly behind us. The companies that had volatility are not the ones that are operating successfully now. So some of the more successful education companies are actually looking towards growth. We've seen some announcements of people hiring more enrollment advisors, which means they're planning for more growth. And you know, there's not necessarily an increased demand for education quite at this time, but they're planning for the future that that's going to happen.
Cool. Jose, talking about diversification and the move of a lot of, especially publishers, trying to be agile and to switch to a vertical that seems to be making more money today. What are some of the recommendations that you have for a publisher that steps into health insurance today that hasn't promoted health insurance? What are the things that you have seen to make a partner most successful with in a very short period of time?
Yeah, well, I mean, health insurance is a very particular category. You know, our partners are ROI driven. You know, they're quality driven. So we're basically on the hook to understand the advertisers deeply, to understand our sources deeply, to understand the quality and how the traffic is converting. So, you know, it's one of those categories where you need a lot of longevity because you need a lot of data as to what's working and what's not working. I mean, if you have a call center, for example, that's buying Medicare leads from us, you know, they're not spending branding dollars with us. They don't have a budget that they need to spend. Basically, for every dollar that they're spending with you, they need to see an ROI. The sales need to happen and they need to convert at a certain cost per sale, and they need to generate a profit. So we're pretty much in the very microscope of our partners. You know, basically the buck stops with us when it comes to providing that quality. Our demand side, which is our partners, you know, they buy our leads or calls or a click, you know, in an open auction, basically. You know, our sources and you know, the engagements that we sell downstream, you know, we get paid basically on an auction basis. So if the quality is going downstream, then we have a healthy market. If every partner is generating the ROI they're looking for, and especially nowadays, we have a healthy market. So I think the intricacies of health insurance, of what I think it could be, it's a tough in a way, but you know, very sustainable if you know how to do it. Like I said, we've been in this vertical for over a decade, so every day we get better because we get disposition reports from our advertisers, and we have very close partnerships with them, from call centers to carriers. So as long as you have very strong long-term relationships with your partners, they can depend on you. You can keep those relationships because they know that you're generating an ROI, and that's what we have to do every day. We have to get better at understanding our partners, and you know, it's one of those things with the category. When back at Brokers Web, you know, a big category for us was auto insurance, and you know, in auto, it's more developed in the sense that, you know, you could click over and go through the funnel and bind the policy online, and you could know in you know, 15 minutes or 5 minutes or something, and we could understand click to policy really basically live. And you know, we've kept those that way of operating, and it's all about quality, especially nowadays. People want to make sure, like you guys said in the beginning of the presentation, everything is moving to performance. Those that can provide quality, those that can provide a steady stream of quality traffic can win, because that's what customers are looking for. And I say that for my category and all the other categories as well. They want to make sure that theirs have an ROI. So it's a lot of work. And again, the ones that can provide that quality and understand it, I think they have a big chance to win and become, you know, much bigger than before this COVID thing.
Thanks, Jose. Let me actually ask Mark's opinion about that, but there are some questions coming in, so I'm definitely going to address some of those questions. I think we have about 10 minutes left. If there is other questions, please let them come in. Mark, in terms of if you suddenly have 75 people sitting at home that need to be fed with leads, how are you balancing the volume versus quality today, and how are you driving that within your campaign strategies on the front end?
Yep. So, Natalie had the slide of the unknown changes in our sales funnel. And so, we know what a lead costs, and we know what we hope to get in terms of, cost per install, but we don't know how all the numbers in the middle are going to move. And especially when you're bringing on new leads, new agents, new dialing technology and patterns, things like that. For us, we've got a few different things that we're doing. One, our partnership with PX is a big part of our marketing strategy. Letting you guys manage to our, install goals, our CPI goals has been very helpful. But, in addition to that, we're seeing more activity, with the affiliate leads. We're actually seeing prices drive up there. People are outbidding us, and we're fine kind of stepping out and letting that play out where we feel it doesn't make financial sense for us. But in turn, reporting, tracking, and just keeping a close eye on it. I think, as you talk about giving, a lead to a lot of new people, you can wreck the bus pretty fast. We were, we kind of modeled how much money we want to put behind each rep each day, how much media we want to put behind them. And so, we're trying to keep them engaged, keep them to where they can make enough money to survive this hardship and this downturn. But be mindful of where we're buying the leads, what the leads cost, and then as we see more data come in on the sales funnel, we can kind of pull the levers and continue to drive efficiencies. But again, the PX partnership has been helpful in taking some of the stress off of us and let you guys manage into our install goals.
Thank you. Natalie, let me ask you a question that might be related to some of the content that you shared as well. Marianne is asking how to deal with in-home presentations where consumers seem to be pushing off appointments today, which have an impact on the campaigns that Marianne is currently promoting through email and SMS. Do you have any suggestions as things that Marianne or her company can do in terms of mitigating that within her campaigns today?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I think one of the strategies that we highlighted in particular for home services companies where an in-home appointment is part of the sales funnel could be really useful here as well. So the suggestion that I would have is think about how you can convey to the consumer that you're actually able to run this appointment or run this inspection or run these measurements virtually. So look into what are some of the virtual communication tools that you can empower your team with, whether that's Zoom, Skype, or others. There's certainly a lot of options there, and coach the sales team, the inside sales team, on how to run those inspections virtually. Probably gives the consumers a real sense of control and empowerment if they can walk you through the home themselves and keep those social distancing rules enforced.
Thank you, Natalie. Let me tee up with one question for the three of you guys, or actually end up with one question for the three of you guys. I'm going to combine it to see what you're able to share. First of all, I want to ask, what is the smartest thing that you have seen other companies do over the last few weeks? And what do you think we all can do today to show leadership towards both our employees, towards our partners, and to really focus on that in these difficult times? I see, Rush, you're muted, so I'm going to give this one to you. If you're muted, I'm muted now. No, you're muted.
So, how's that possible?
You're good. You're good.
Okay. All right. Good. You're tricking me. So, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think there's been any kind of monumentally, great ideas that were like, wow, that was incredible, that I've seen in our day-to-day. It's been more incremental, just people who care a great deal and are all jumping in and trying to help. One of the things that I was just super impressed with, and it's a LeadsCouncil member, was probably the earliest company that I saw that really understood what was coming. And that was DMS, Digital Media Strategies. And I was even one I was traveling at the time that they said they're canceling all travel. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I think it took us all a while to kind of assimilate what the heck was going on here. And I was impressed by that. So to me, it's all about, what I've been so impressed by in the last few weeks has been how many people have been putting people first, putting customers first, putting their employees first. And when you do that, we're going to figure out good ways of working together and doing smart things together. And they were ahead of the curve there, which really impressed me. And it impacted our decisions from that point.
You're muted, boss.
You're learning bad habits from me. So,
Jose?
100%. I agree with Ross. We also were a little bit paranoid and canceled our travels. We canceled LeadsCon, even though I was in your panel, boss. So I, feel bad about that. But this thing was very a lot of uncertainty, and when it comes to health, you definitely don't want to take risks. You don't want to take risks with your employees and with your clients. And we pulled the plug and we said, hey, everybody go home and take care of yourself and your family first. And if you can still make the calls and can still work and so what I think I've been more impressed is that not only our company, but it seems that a lot of people in our industry have been working basically, uninterrupted, from home and working remotely and getting things done. I mean, I think everybody that was able to work remote has been doing an incredible job across the board, from our partners and investors and employees. And I'm knocking on wood that so far we haven't gotten anybody that's gotten infected, but from everybody that we talk to and do business with, everybody seems to be at work, seems to be safe. And that's what I've been really impressed about, because some people are always gung-ho and their travel and take risks, but it seems that everybody got some consciousness about this, and at least our industry, everybody's still productive and working hard, and most importantly, being safe for them and for their families. So I've been pretty impressed about that.
Beautiful said. Mark, in terms of anything that you've seen that really interested you, that you were really impressed with that other companies did, and what do you feel like on the leadership front today, both internally and externally?
Yeah. One thing that I've seen that I don't think would have happened without this disruption is we're seeing companies work together in ways that we're seeing competing companies work together in ways that they otherwise, wouldn't have considered. And so, I think we're all kind of in a survival mode. We all want to take care of our companies, our employees. We know that this we'll get through this. I think we're all still optimistic that life will at some point return to normal. And so I think companies have been more willing to collaborate and partnership in ways that are mutually beneficial. I think everyone's been humbled by this, and so I've been really impressed in some of the partnerships that we've recently engaged in that I directly attribute to this disruption. And so, if we can come out of this with still kind of that collaborative spirit about ourselves and finding ways to even though we compete in a fair way and in a way that we can take emotion out of it and still have fun and collaborate with these other companies. And so I've been impressed with that and hope that can continue.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Jose and Mark. I know you guys are also available to talk offline with people that have any other questions. And for the participants, please do so. Rob, let me give it back to you.
Well, I really want to
thank you, Ross.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank all of you, Boss, Natalie, Mark, Ross, and Jose. You know, as you guys ended with that question, I can say that this entire webinar series is as a result of people getting out of their comfort zone, doing something for the industry. I've got 10 weeks of content and people lining up behind that saying, hey, look, we want to contribute to the ecosystem. So, you know, as a Leads Council representative, I certainly am feeling it firsthand. And Ross, your point was great. I remember that moment when, you know, Joey Liner was like, hey, we're not going. And everybody's like, wait, what? And so, you know, it's amazing to see now where we are today versus that moment. I do want to give you just a couple of quick updates on the council. I know we're running right at the top of the hour. On your screen, you can see that next week's, as I mentioned, is We Scares Because We Cares. CARES being the CARES Act that was passed. Eric Troutman, he's just an individual. On the landing page, if you go to leadscouncil.org, I want to make sure that on the event tab, that is next week's registration already live. You can sign up when you get to the landing page. There's a teaser video there that you can see a little bit about what we're going to talk about. Eric Troutman is going to talk about what's happening with the CARES Act, the telemarketing laws. It's really exciting to hear what behind the scenes is going on. And then, of course, you know, we're still moving along. I think, Mark, you mentioned it. TCPA, CCPA, privacy, all these things are still there. I mean, you know, just because we're working from home, it doesn't mean that all of the compliance restrictions and obligations that you have to consumers has gone away. Trust me, I'm talking to attorneys who are telling us the regulators and legislators are watching us out of the corner of their eye. So we need to make sure that we're doing right to the consumer during these times. And I also want to point out that the council on the silver membership has dropped our price from $2,000 a year to $500. Had several of you all sign up immediately. It has not only access to content like this, but we have a membership directory. We have discounts to LeadsCon and to Lead Generation World, which ROI out the investment. $42 a month. It's a no-brainer for you companies that are out there struggling and need access to some of these assets. Guys, once again, this was incredible. It's exactly what we need at this point in time. This is going to be recorded. It's evergreen content. People can come back in. I really appreciate it, and thank you very much. We'll see you all again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank
safe.
you, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
In the meeting.